At number 10 is the Eddie Bedlam Hybrid. This brand new red 4-armed version of Venom looks so sleek, and I'm loving it. This character's so new, in fact, that he doesn't even have a name as of scripting this video. Nor does he have his own wiki article. So if you want to make one, please do. If you've been out of the loop on the Venom comics in the past couple of years, then what I'm about to say is gonna sound completely bonkers. But to make a long story short, this dude is the amalgamation of two different time-displaced versions of Eddie Brock. One version who went to limbo and transformed into a rage-fueled behemoth known as Bedlam, and the other Eddie was a version who could manipulate his own body like a symbiote. Now, obviously, I'm glossing over a whole lot here, but just bear with me for a sec. So anyway, these two versions of Eddie Brock, both of whom have symbiote powers without technically being symbiotes themselves, although that's probably up for debate, face off against each other. Brock then uses his symbiote powers to continue the fight inside Bedlam's mind, where he's ultimately successful in defeating Bedlam, and the two merge to form this beauty right over here. And to put things into perspective, this new Venom had a massive showdown against Dr. Doom, and even gives him a run for his money. I mean, that is until the two of them have to team up against a T-Rex Venom, and if you feel like you have no idea what I'm talking about, good. Means I'm doing my job right. We have a lot to cover today, buddy, so strap in. At number 9 is Widow. It's about time that Natasha Romanoff, aka the Black Widow, got a spider-themed upgrade. In the aftermath of a warehouse blaze, she stumbled upon a symbiote spawned from the DNA of either Toxin or Venom. It's unclear which one, and I'm not about to call Mari to find out. Now, this symbiote had a unique quirk: memory absorption. You see, if she chowed down on the brains of her victims, she could absorb their memories and personalities. So essentially, it's the ability to instantly know what makes someone tick, what drives them, and then perfectly mimic them, because, I mean, you just chewed on their brains, so they're not coming back. This symbiote here is a game changer, allowing Natasha to blend seamlessly into any situation, making her a formidable addition to the symbiote roster. So while Venom and Carnage might hog the spotlight, don't forget to give a nod to these lesser-known symbiotes, like this memory-absorbing marvel. If you're enjoying the video so far, please support the channel by pressing like, subscribing to Top 10 Nerd, and ringing that notification bell. It helps more people see our videos, and I would really appreciate that. At number 8 is Warstar. Warstar is a Type 2 battle symbiote from the future, a fascinating addition to the world of symbiotes. You see, unlike the usual rebellious symbiotes we're used to, Warstar is a stickler for following protocols and is fiercely loyal to his creator, Kang the Conqueror. But things take a wild turn when Eddie Brock, our favorite Venom host, gets mixed up with this futuristic symbiote. Even though it's programmed to be loyal to Kang, Warstar quickly relinquishes control to Eddie and helps him take down 3 squads of Kang's guards. It even helps Eddie dump a Type 4 battle symbiote into space. Now, that's teamwork. But their adventure doesn't end there. They eventually confront Kang himself, and Warstar, though reluctant, engages in combat against his former master, now framed as a training exercise by Eddie. Warstar's powers are quite unique. Not only can he shapeshift into various forms, including creating mechanized devices, but he also seems to possess some cybernetic enhancements. You see, this symbiote can morph its hands into weapons, create flamethrowers out of him, and even replicate Kang's time sword. Now, it remains unclear if it shares the typical symbiote weaknesses, as it's shown immunity to flames, as it can literally create flame forts, spewing 2,000 degree Kelvin flames of its own. At number 7 is the Red Goblin. The Red Goblin, you guys, a mind-bending combination of the Carnage symbiote and the classic Green Goblin. You thought Carnage was insane? Well, this hybrid takes it to a whole new level. The Red Goblin first made its appearance in the comics, bringing a terrifying twist to the Marvel Universe. With super strength, speed, and the ability to generate weapons from his symbiote suit, he's a force that'll give Spider-Man a run for his money. This Crimson Menace redefines what it means to be a symbiote, combining the best, or should we say worst, of both worlds. At number 6 is Liz Allen, aka Misery. This sinister symbiote made its debut in Cult of Carnage Misery earlier this year. It's an absolute game changer. Alchemex, the shadowy company has been conducting some questionable experiments involving the Carnage symbiote and its nemesis, Anti-Venom. And during a chaotic attack on Alchemax, the company's CEO, Liz Allen, yes, the very same Liz that's Spider-Man's girlfriend in the MCU movies, got exposed to this unholy hybrid, fusing the power of Carnage and Anti-Venom into one nasty package, transforming her into the new Misery. At number 5, have you ever heard about Serpent? No, we're not talking about the garden. We're talking about a brand new symbiote introduced in Venom number 13 in 2021. Serpent's origins are tied to the aftermath of Dark Web in 2022. You see, after a showdown between Eddie Brock and the King of Limbo, Serpent emerged onto the scene. But what sets the Serpent apart from the more well-known symbiotes? Well, he's not your typical gooey alien life form. Since his debut, Serpent has bonded with some intriguing characters. We're talking about Donald Blake, the human form of Thor, and even Desmond Pitt, also known as Darkoff. Serpent is a mysterious addition to the symbiote family, and it's fascinating to see how it interacts with these other characters in the Marvel Universe. At number 4 is Rascal. You might think you know all about these symbiotes, but hold on to your web slingers because here's one that's been flying under the radar. Rascal. This cheeky symbiote made his way in the free comic book day of 2022, Spider-Man Venom number 1. But what sets Rascal apart is its rather tender age and immature nature. You see, he's currently teaming up with Normie Osborn, the grandson of the notorious Norman Osborn, the Green Goblin himself. Dylan Brock, in an act of benevolence, handed over Rascal to Normie as part of a mission to assist Eddie Brock. With Rascal on board, Normie's taken up the Red Goblin mantle once more, a nod to the previous tangle with the Carnage symbiote. So here's a symbiote that's fresh to the scene and ready to stir up some trouble in the Spider-Verse. At number 3 is the Extremobite. The Extremobite is a symbiote like no other, emerging during Knull's rampage in the Marvel Universe. But what sets it apart is, well, Tony Stark, otherwise known as Iron Man, who whipped up a little something called the Extremis virus and unleashed it on a symbiote dragon. The result? DNA rewrite extravaganza. Post-DNA remix, this symbiote didn't stop at just bonding with its host. It decided to shack up with Iron Man's suit first. Talk about an unexpected twist. And after a brief fling with the armor, it found a more permanent home in the form of Cletus Cassidy, aka Carnage. Now, what makes the Extremobite armor truly bizarre is its newfound powers. It can actually bend reality on a small scale and conjure mind-bending illusions. At number 2 is the Tyrannosaurus symbiote. This unique symbiote, introduced in Venom 2018 number 1, is a standout for its ability to spawn offshoots. Imagine one symbiote giving birth to little symbiote babies, each with its own agenda. But this wasn't your typical birth, as it all started with a chilling twist. You see, after a confrontation with Thor, the Tyrannosaurus symbiote got itself deep frozen in ice. S.H.I.E.L.D., always up to something, recovered this frosty friend and decided to use it for the Sim Soldier program. They aimed to recreate the super soldier serum, and in the process, they birthed several offshoot symbiotes. One of these, aptly nicknamed Tyrannosaurus, latched onto a soldier named Rex Strickland during the Vietnam War. The Tyrannosaurus symbiote, everybody, a whole different level of symbiotic history. And at number 1 is Bedlam, but this time before he was turned into that super cool version of himself. Bedlam, born from a time-twisting mess, is a version of Eddie Brock with a serious thirst for revenge against Spider-Man. I mean, more so than he already had. And like I previously mentioned, after a showdown with the original Eddie, he begrudgingly teams up. Now, Bedlam's standout feature is his powers. As a King in Black descendant, he's got all sorts of potent abilities. He can jump into other symbiotes and control them. He can also time travel and shapeshift. Oh, and he's a fan of combat and terrible puns. So Bedlam is one symbiote you might not have seen on your radar, but he's a real game changer in the symbiote world. At number 10 is Kid Venom. Kid Venom is the newest addition to the symbiote roster, making their debut in Marvel's Unaliving of the Venomverse limited series, and with his upcoming origin story set to release early 2024. This unique character was created by the talented manga artist Taigami, also known for Unsung Hero. Kid Venom's origin story takes us back to 10th century Japan, where a brave warrior named Kintaro is determined to protect his village from the mysterious symbiote attacks. But here's where it gets a twist. To defend his people, he bonds with the symbiote himself, known as Clinter, becoming the sensational Kid Venom. Sorry, I'm at the very top. Now with incredible powers and wild abilities, Kid Venom faces off against the ferocious Carnage. The clash between these two symbiote powerhouses promises to be an action-packed showdown in the page unaliving of the Venomverse. At number 9 is Hybrid. Not the usual hybrid we're used to, but this one is the hybrid symbiote in conjunction with the Maker. So if you're unaware, in the world of Marvel Comics, the symbiotes have always been a source of intrigue and danger, but the Maker hybrid takes things to a whole new level. Imagine combining the twisted genius of Reed Richards from the Ultimate Marvel Universe, where he's evil, with the powers of not one, but 4 Life Foundation symbiotes. We got Riot, Phage, Lasher, and Agony. And that's what we get with the Maker hybrid. See, the Maker is known for his sinister intellect, and he's already a formidable villain on his own. But when you add the symbiotes into the mix, you get a nightmarish creature with the elasticity and brain power of Mr. Fantastic and the ferocity of the Carnage. It's not your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man villain. He's a menacing force that poses a threat even greater than the Carnage himself. This all came to be when Cletus Cassidy's chaotic plan threatened those who've bonded with the symbiotes. And so Peter Park and Eddie Brock sought an unlikely ally, the sinister Reed Richards from the Ultimate Marvel Universe, also known as the Maker, in a bid to create a machine capable of safely extracting the symbiote codex from previous hosts. However, evil Reed wanted to test the thing out on Dylan against his will, and the dude wasn't having it, releasing the Life Foundation symbiotes, leading to the birth of the monstrous new hybrid. If you're enjoying the video so far, you can support the channel by pressing like, subscribing to Top 10 Nerd, and ringing that notification bell. At number 8 is Madness. The Madness symbiote is a fusion of the hybrid symbiote we just talked about, plus Scream and Toxin, minus the Maker. Madness is made up of the Life Foundation symbiotes in a new mix and match form unlike any other. So the story goes that when a group of billionaires attempted to create a new society, they acquired the 5 symbiotes to guard it: Agony, Phage, Riot, Lasher, and Scream. Additionally, a strain of the Toxin symbiote was also held by Alchemex, along with a bunch of other symbiotes, but they're not important for the story. Thus begins Madness's origin story, as all 6 of these symbiotes were stolen, merged together, and bonded to Corwin Jones to form Madness. From the acid-fleeing Agony to Lasher's ability to possess multiple beings at once with its organic lashes, the art shows of how the multicolored symbiote retains the differing personalities of its constituent parts. But when Madness was ultimately defeated by Misery, aka Liz Allen, who, if you haven't heard of, definitely stick around, the Madness symbiote was recovered and bonded to a brain-dead human cyborg by the Life Foundation to create an obedient super soldier, giving us the Symbiotex Madness offshoot. This host was later unalived by Spider-Man, leaving the symbiote strain to be secured once again by Alchemex. At number 7 is Sleeper. Meet Sleeper, the 7th spawn of the infamous Venom symbiote. Sleeper's origin story is a tad bit different from the brain-hungry Clintar you might be familiar with. Concerned that early bonding might turn it into a monster like the other symbiotes, Venom and Eddie Brock decided to let Alchemex study it non-invasively. Despite its youth, Sleeper has got quite the personality, a bit smug to be honest. It boasts about its superiority thanks to its nurturous upbringing, and has a soft spot for Dr. Stephen's music taste. But don't get on its bad side because it's quick to anger and fiercely protective of its parent. Sleeper's not just a pretty face though. He wields chemokinesis, the power to manipulate chemicals, induce emotions, and all the other symbiote powers including cloaking itself. It's a hero in its own right, looking out for Eddie's son Dylan, and going to great lengths to protect him. At number 6 is the Scorpion symbiote that we've all been waiting for. This slimy character made his debut when Lee Price infected Mac Gargan, who was already no stranger to symbiotes thanks to his time as Venom. Price's experience merged the remnants of the Venom symbiote with Gargan, with a piece of his own Maniac symbiote, giving birth to a green and black Scorpion symbiote that mirrored Gargan's iconic Scorpion armor look. Under its influence, Gargan went from literally trembling in fear to embracing the power he craved. This new symbiote was one tough cookie taking on Spider-Man and Agent Anti-Venom in a showdown. However, it met its doom in a rematch against Agent Anti-Venom, leaving Gargan symbiote-less but not defeated. The legacy of the Scorpion symbiote doesn't end there though. Gargan's obsession with symbiotes led him on a wild ride. He even went as far as to become the soldier for the anti-symbiote task force, all in the hopes of bonding with a Venom symbiote once more. But the universe had other plans. Dark Carnage came to town, leaving Gargan paralyzed, and yet he somehow managed to snag yet another Scorpion suit. What's truly fascinating here is the impact on Gargan's personality. The symbiote didn't have a voice, but it awakened something deep within him, making him succumb to his addiction to symbiote power. At number 5 is Madame Venom. In Extreme Venomverse number 3, we're introduced to Madame Brock from Earth 31913, a symbiote variant that's an absolute game changer. She seamlessly blends classic Venom traits with fresh ideas and a touch of Madame Web's mystique, offering a unique take on the character. We also get to talk about Webslinger here, a cowboy Spider-Man from the same reality. After a chance encounter in a small town, he befriends Edna Brock, aka Madame Venom. She's not your average Venom variant. With her whip as her weapon, she embraces the lethal protector ideology, adding a new layer to the character. Madame Brock's design is a fusion of Venom's monstrous appearance with a classical Western twist with that black veil of hers, making her a visual standout. But the most exciting part is Madame Brock's connection to the web of life and destiny, which could make her a key player in multiverse-level events. This new Venom variant is a breath of fresh air and one of the most intriguing additions to the Marvel Universe. At number 4 is Black Cat Venom. This version of Felicia Hardy has the same history as her 616 counterpart, up until Spidey decides to get his black suit checked out by Reed at the Baxter Building. But in this reality, Black Cat, being the stealthy cat burglar she is, tails him and sneaks into the place. Now the twist is that she takes a look at the alien symbiote costume and thinks about her rocky relationship with Spidey. And as it turns out, she realizes that it was the symbiote trying to keep her around, not Peter. See, her and Venom have something in common, as they both love a guy who doesn't quite get them. Faced with this revelation, Felicia decided to cut the creature some slack. She released it, and bam, the symbiote immediately latched onto her like a kid to candy. Mr. Fantastic, the Human Torch, and Bagman stormed in, yes, Bagman, because Peter's not in his costume, believing the symbiote had possessed Felicia. Spider-Man did his thing and trapped them in a fiery cage. Tensions rose, but then Reed Richards, the smart guy, had a trick up his sleeve. He zapped the symbiote with a supposed sonic gun, but it was really just a mood checker. As it turns out, the symbiote was all good with Felicia, and they swung off into the sunset, an unlikely duo. At number 3 is Misery. Misery was born from the twisted minds over at Alchemix. See, they were trying to create the ultimate symbiote, mixing and matching different strains, but the Carnage symbiote they got their hands on wasn't playing nice with the others. It was a real loner. So enter Dr. Steven and Liz Allen, who decided to get creative. They exposed a bit of the Carnage symbiote to the anti-venom serum, hoping for a breakthrough. But things took a turn when Liz herself got tangled up in this symbiote business. Now Liz got some new tricks up her sleeves, like an insane healing factor and the ability to go liquid-like, along with the fact that she looks absolutely terrifying. At number 2 is Father Brock. In this universe, Eddie Brock was a priest of the Roman Catholic Church and an associate of John Deward, a mob enforcer and loan shark who was after Eddie on account of his gambling addiction, leading to substantial loans from the mob. Eddie even stole from the church in order to pay back his debt, but he gambled that away too. Faced with inevitable confrontation from the mob and looming guilt from stealing from his church, Eddie prayed for forgiveness, and that's when he encountered the Venom symbiote. His chance encounter with the symbiote unleashed a darker side, leading to the gruesome fate of the mob guy John Deward as he was devoured by the Sin Eater Venom. But this Venom is just as cunning as he is animalistic, framing the schizophrenic Emil Gregg to throw the police off his trail. And at number 1 is Eddie Brock's Spider-Man. In this alternate universe, Eddie Brock's life takes a turn when Peter Parker met his demise while trying to ditch the black symbiote suit. Feeling guilty for indirectly causing Peter's demise, the symbiote seeks a new host in Eddie. But it's not a seamless transition. The symbiote pretty much hijacks Eddie's body, only allowing him to speak and move while keeping a tight leash on his thoughts. Things get interesting when Dr. Octavius rolls into town. During the brawl against this new Spider-Man, Ock discovers the symbiote's weakness, which is loud noises. This temporarily separates Eddie and the alien suit. Ock, thinking that he's got the upper hand, decides to off Eddie, but that's when our man Eddie decides for himself that he wants to continue being a hero, even if it's under the symbiote's influence. As he tosses a brick at Ock and reunites with the symbiote, they find a new harmony, working seamlessly to defeat Ock as the new Spider-Man. But just when they thought it was all settled, a new female agent Venom shows up, begging them into a mysterious portal. You're just gonna have to read the comics to find out more.
Number 10, Toxin. The son of Carnage, Toxin was believed to be the most powerful symbiote, being the 1000th symbiote in the lineage of Venom, with Venom being the 998th and Carnage being the 999th. The raw power of Toxin was so great that he was feared even by the King in Black, Knull, creator and leader of the symbiotes. Carnage became aware that he was pregnant with a new symbiote. However, even before the birth, he felt only disgust for his future newborn for fear that it would become more powerful than he is, but also because he was grossed out that normally being a male, he could even be, quote, pregnant with a symbiote in the first place, and that's really weird to me, but that's what happened. He therefore resolved to eliminate his offspring. Luckily though for Toxin, Venom, who quickly learned the news, decided to protect the new symbiote and take him under his wing. So, trained by Venom and bonded with a New York City cop named Patrick Mulligan, Toxin's powers remained restrained and focused on doing good. His childlike personality prevented him from unleashing his full power, which is great because he has quite the power. Toxin resists heat and sound better than other symbiotes can. He can track anyone and has all the combined strength of both Venom and Carnage. Now more recently, Toxin also developed a venomous bite, assuming you would survive the massive bite in the first place. Mulligan was eventually taken out and his symbiote forcibly bonded to Eddie Brock before it found a new host named Bren Waters during the King in Black event.
At number 9 is Grendel. Billions of years back, Knull set loose a lineup of dominating symbiotes designed to obliterate everything in their path. Among these, the Grendel emerged as a dragon of sheer power. After landing on the Earth way back in the 6th century, it engaged in a tumultuous showdown with Thor, leading to its entrapment within a glacier. But its slumber was disturbed when S.H.I.E.L.D. unearthed it centuries later. Then the Maker came along, a brilliant yet controversial figure in the symbiote saga, who got his hands on a fragment of Grendel. His intentions were to use it for his symbiote-related experiments. However, the plot thickens. You see, the cult of Knull had different plans, snagging the Grendel shard and connecting it with the lifeless body of Cletus Cassidy. What ensued was a merging of unprecedented magnitude, reviving Cletus and binding him to Knull. This fusion birthed a new chapter in the Symbiote Chronicles, transforming the Grendel piece into a daunting doppelganger of the original Carnage symbiote. The result was a creature possessing not just the legacy of Grendel, but also the essence of Carnage, evolving into an entity that redefines the term formidable.
Hey, if you're enjoying this video so far, you can support the channel by pressing like, subscribing to Top 10 Nerd, and ringing that notification bell. Only if you want it. You don't have to, but you know, it'd be nice.
It's free.
Thanks. Number 8, Anti-Venom. The Anti-Venom symbiote was created when Venom bonded with Eddie Brock after the man was cured of cancer by Mr. Negative. Now thanks to Mr. Negative's healing powers, Eddie's antibodies gave birth to a new kind of symbiote when Venom tried to rebond, inverting the black and the white of the original Venom symbiote costume. Oh, right, and this is now a symbiote with no consciousness of its own, effectively making it a benign biological white Venom costume controlled by Eddie Brock. Now it possessed the same strength as its Venom predecessor, but importantly has different anti-symbiote powers. His touch is basically caustic to symbiotes and can destroy them with long enough exposure. Anti-Venom can cure people affected by things like radioactivity, parasites, diseases, and certain substances. And he still has all the enhancements afforded by a symbiote. To make this symbiote even more impressive though, Anti-Venom is resistant to heat and sound, the symbiote's most significant weaknesses. The Anti-Venom symbiote was recently used to throw a wrench in Carnage's plan to become an extremely powerful version of himself, although it was only momentary.
At number 7 is Zux. Zux, making its debut in X-Men Kingbreaker number 2 in January of 2009, represents an extraordinary outlier among symbiotes, standing as one of the most formidable entities within its species. Now, what distinguishes Zux, besides its unique name, is its very unique mutation, granting it unparalleled control over hosts, in stark contrast to the typical symbiotic relationship observed in other members of its kind. You see, unlike conventional symbiotes that form a cooperative bond with their hosts, symbiotes. Zoox deviates by completely consuming its hosts, extracting substance from their organic essence rather than merely feeding off of adrenaline and other organic chemicals. Initially incarcerated by the Shi'ar, Zoox subsequently emerged as a powerful tool in various cosmic clashes, exhibiting a brutal and savage nature that cemented its reputation as one of the most menacing and lethal symbiotes to traverse the galaxy's expanse.
Number 6, Meridius. Meridius is an extremely new and pretty unique villain, being the one pulling the strings behind the events of the current Venom run. Now, when Eddie Brock defeated Knull and became the new King in Black, he began to play with the ability to switch from symbiote to symbiote within the symbiote hive mind with just the thought. And then he pushed it even further. Trying to see if he could move not only through space but through time, this eventually led Eddie into contact with other Kings in Black throughout time and to Meridius. Now it turns out that Meridius is actually a temporal offshoot of Eddie Brock, who had become unmoored in time following the loss of his physical body and was embroiled in a time loop started by himself to ensure his own existence and to try and stop himself from becoming the eventuality, which is a kind of antithesis to the Beyonders, which Eddie Brock will always eventually become. Rejecting his true purpose, Meridius created the Garden of Time, where he manipulates not only his past selves, aka Eddie, Finnegan, Bedlam, Wild, and Tyro, but also Dylan Brock and the Venom symbiote, trying to use them to change his own future. Being a millennia-old King in Black, I have no doubt Knull would fear Meridius.
At number 5 is Big Mother. The thumbnail, we're finally there. Big Mother, originating from the ancient tale of Beowulf, is one of the most powerful symbiotes out there. This basically demon possesses an incredible array of abilities. Her strength, durability, and stamina are off the charts, making her virtually immune to aging, diseases, and many forms of harm. Donning a demonic appearance, she has a range of powers, possibly sorcery, and shape-shifting abilities, retaining her terrifying visage. Big Mother is a vicious predator equipped with razor-sharp claws and fangs capable of consuming entire individuals whole. Her demonic nature evokes fear and panic attacks among those accustomed to confronting these supernatural beings. Her personality even reflects her demonic origins. See, she takes pleasure in sadistic acts, especially devouring humans alive, but oddly enough, she's protective of her own kind, displaying a nurturing side towards her offspring. She's notably vengeful, particularly towards Beowulf for his actions against her son Grendel. Unwilling to be manipulated for others' gains, she pursues her own desires, as seen in her unexpected venture as a professional wrestler, relishing in the violence and the chance to devour her opponents. A threat taken seriously despite many assuming it's just part of her act.
Number 4, All Black Necrosword. All Black, initially born as a Necrosword, was the first ever symbiote created from the shadow of the evil deity Knull, and softened with the divine power of a slain celestial head, because that's just how it goes. It was basically a sword created from living darkness, and it gives its wielder an exceeding level of power and capability, enough to be able to slay gods. After removing the All Black away from Knull, the alien Gore is corrupted by both his hatred of gods and the dark symbiote itself, and he continues the quote, butchering of the gods started by Knull himself. Long after Gore's defeat in the King Thor timeline, King Thor uses the All Black to stop Galactus from consuming the Earth, but then the All Black connects to Galactus, who becomes Galactus the World Butcher. When Ego the Living Planet arrives, the All Black goes to Ego instead and transforms him into Ego the Necroplanet, who then eats Galactus, and then Ego is destroyed by this timeline's Loki, who takes the All Black Necrosword and becomes Loki the All Butcher, and this sword needs to just chill the heck out because it's too much.
At number 3 is Scorn. Originally birthed from the aftermath of Carnage's shenanigans, Tanis Nieves, or Knives, I don't know, bonding with the offspring of the Carnage symbiote. Scorn then dived headfirst into a whole chaotic tangle. See, this new entity brought real firepower against Carnage, teaming up with the Mercury team to hold off a hostile takeover in Dovertown. But things took a darker turn as Scorn got entangled in the web spun by Knull, the ancient symbiote god. In a shocking showdown, a twisted chain of events unfolded. A whole cult vibe emerged, worshipping Knull, seeing Cletus Cassidy as Knull's mouthpiece. Scorn made a daring move trying to fuse the Grendel symbiote into Cletus to bring Knull back. Yet, in a brutish twist, Cletus went full rogue, taking out Tanis and leaving Scorn's destiny hanging in the balance. The symbiote roller coaster just took a wicked turn, and we're left hanging, wondering what's next in this wild, unpredictable symbiote saga.
Number 2, Venom. Chronologically, Chronologically, in Marvel Comics, other symbiotes had come before, but Venom was the first to appear, and the one that set the symbiotic ball rolling. After being rejected by Spider-Man, the alien Venom bonded to Eddie Brock, a disgraced reporter who also hated the Spid. The two became a lethal protector anti-hero eventually. Now, Venom is not the strongest of all symbiotes by any means, but he's certainly one of the most persevering. Venom has been tested against more dangerous symbiotes and always comes out on top because he's willing to sacrifice everything to keep the world a safer place, and also because he's the main character. He's proved that he can conquer the urges of his race and become a force for good. Because of his unbreakable spirit, Venom was powered up by the god of light itself, granting him the power to defeat Knull once and for all, allowing Eddie Brock to become the new King in Black. As for the symbiote, Venom has recently bonded with Eddie's son, Dylan Brock, and they are both acting as a hero on Earth, but the Venom symbiote has had a bunch of different hosts. The first, chronologically, was a Kree by the name of Tel-Kar, but it's also bonded to Anne Wang and Patricia Robertson to become She-Venom 2 times, the wimpy Angelo Fortano, Mac Gargan the Scorpion, Flash Thompson to become Agent Venom, who's really cool, Lee Price, Malekith the Accursed, and a bunch of other characters because Venom is just cool.
At number 1 is Sleeper. Meet Sleeper, the 7th spawn of the infamous Venom symbiote. Sleeper's origin story is a tad bit different from the brain-hungry Clintar you might be familiar with. You see, this unique symbiote was born under very unusual circumstances, thanks to Dr. Steven at Alchemex's astrobiology lab. Concerned that early bonding might turn it into a monster like the rest of the Clintar, the Venom symbiote and Eddie Brock decided to let Alchemex study it non-invasively. Now, despite its youth, Sleeper's got quite the personality, a bit smug to be honest. It boasts about its superiority thanks to its nurturing upbringing and has a soft spot for Dr. Steven's music taste. But don't get on its bad side because it's quick to anger and fiercely protective of its parent. Sleeper isn't just a pretty face though. It wields chemokinesis, the power to manipulate chemicals, induce emotions, and even cloak itself from other symbiotes. He's a hero in his own right, looking out for Eddie's son Dylan and going to great lengths to protect him.
Coming in at number 10, it's Zix, or however you say it. A mutant of the Clintar or symbiote race, Zix was classified as one of the 5 most dangerous criminals the Shi'ar Empire had ever captured. Instead of making a symbiotic bond with its host, this symbiote would instead take complete control over whoever its host was, and instead of feeding off of adrenaline and chemicals produced in the body like other symbiotes might, Zix would instead just feed off the host itself, consuming their brains and their life essence until there was nothing left. Very pleasant. Other than that unique facet of its being though, it possessed all the same abilities of other members of its race. Like I said before, Zix was captured by the Shi'ar Empire for how gruesome it was, but after some time, it was used by the Shi'ar as a weapon instead, and that's where it truly showed that it was one of the most fearsome and terrifying symbiotes that ever stalked the Starways. Number 9, Hybrid. Hybrid isn't really one symbiote. Hybrid is the fusion of 4 of the 5 Life Foundation symbiotes into a single symbiote. Riot, Lasher, Phage, and Agony all melded together and bonded to Scott Washington, a guard at the Vault, the supervillain prison. Now, allowing them to go free, Scott was fired and went through a pretty rough time, losing both of his legs as well as his brother. The 4 symbiotes, after reuniting with Scott, bonded with him, giving him back the ability to walk. The symbiotes, funnily enough, actually tried to curb the anger inside of Scott, which is not normally what they do. But then again, since his symbiote was originally 4 different entities, Scott also had to deal with 4 different voices in his head all the time, and that's kind of a downside in my opinion. Unfortunately, after Scott got his revenge on the ex-Easy gang that had crippled him, Eddie Brock Venom tracked down and took out Washington in order to eliminate all the evil symbiotes, which he didn't even do because the 4 symbiotes that made up Hybrid survived, were separated, and turned over to the United States government as a special symbiote team. Number 8, Sleeper. The Sleeper symbiote was very different in comparison to others birthed of the Venom alien. The youngest son of Venom, Sleeper was allowed to develop and incubate in a safe environment before attaching himself to a host, which gave it some notable differences and advantages. For starters, Sleeper had an altered appearance and didn't take on some of the characteristics of the Venom symbiote, like the big Spider-Man-like white eyes. He also didn't become a killing machine like most other symbiotes do. It was mature and cool, while kind of maybe a little bit smug. He has increased cognitive functionality, allowing Sleeper to take a much more measured approach to combat rather than just diving in headfirst like all the other symbiotes do. Sleeper is actually so intelligent that it lobotomized its host, Tel-Kar, and used him as a puppet in order to avoid being influenced by the Kree warrior. Other than its unique look and intelligence though, Sleeper also developed unique abilities like being able to bend light to camouflage itself and release neurotoxins that can put his enemies to sleep, and a whole bunch of other things. He's a pretty neat symbiote if I do say so myself. Number 7, Anti-Venom. The Anti-Venom was more like a symbiote suit that didn't have its own consciousness and could be completely controlled by its host, which is great. Eddie Brock gained the ability to use/control this symbiote after he had separated from the Venom symbiote, which left traces of itself in his body. Martin Lee, otherwise known as Mr. Negative, then used his powers to cure the cancer that Eddie had at the time, with the side effect of fusing the remnants of Venom with the negative powers and Eddie's own white blood cells. In the comics, this led to the new Anti-Venom symbiote emerging that had a lot of the same symbiote powers that Eddie had with Venom, plus unique healing powers like producing antibodies that can cure any known disease and removing any other impurities within a human body, which apparently includes other symbiotes because it allowed Eddie Brock to completely reject Venom when he tried to rebond. Number 6, Payback. Payback is Mavis Trent, an agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. who bonded with a symbiote that isn't exactly a member of the same race the other symbiotes like Venom and Carnage are. Her symbiote is more like an offshoot or cousin of the Clintar race. Payback is an energy-based symbiote rather than an organically based one, which as you can imagine makes her rather unique, with some really cool different symbiote powers to boot. While having all the usual superhuman enhancements, Payback can also fly and produce electromagnetic manipulation in the form of microwaves and electromagnetic pulses. The symbiote itself had previously bonded to her father and had imprinted with his personality and memories, which then transferred to Mavis when they bonded. The symbiote also feeds off its host's bliss without hurting them at all, which actually sounds kind of lovely. Number 5, Scream. Donna Diego was a mentally disturbed woman who eventually became involved with the Life Foundation and later became a host for that last Life Foundation symbiote, the most powerful of Venom's first offspring, Scream. The Scream symbiote had gone off on her own, away from the four that became hybrid. Bonding with Donna, they became a villain at first and encountered both Spider-Man and Venom before she struck out attempting to find a way to peacefully bond with her symbiote, although Donna was led into a trap and defeated by Venom anyways. Her powers were very similar to other Venom symbiotes, except with a few notable exceptions, such as her ability to extend her hair into tendrils, gotta love that prehensile hair, and she was also strong enough to defeat all 4 of her brothers, and Scream also controlled Donna's body after the woman had actually passed away, which is crazy because symbiotes are parasites and need a living host in order to survive. Number 4, Silence. Sweet, probably kind of angsty high school student Andrea Benton was accidentally bonded to a separate piece, or I guess we can call it a clone, of the Venom symbiote when Flash Thompson as Agent Venom tried to protect her, leading to her debut as the new sidekick, Mania. Now, Mania is pretty awesome and she looks super cool, but Andrea was eventually separated from the Mania symbiote after she was possessed by a demonic Hellmark, later bonding with the reborn Scream symbiote that we just talked about, arguably the most powerful of the Life Foundation symbiotes. Now, later on, Carnage corrupted the Scream symbiote and Andy used her Hellfire to wipe it out for good, or so she thought. Alchemax then used the symbiote's remains alongside a sample of the Anti-Venom symbiote to create a somewhat brand new symbiote known as Silence. Andy bonded with this symbiote thinking it was Scream, but in actuality she became this new symbiote Silence instead, getting a new corruptive touch deadly to other symbiotes as well as the usual symbiote powers, plus the Scream symbiote's hair tendril thingies, which are really cool. Number 3, Grendel. Grendel himself is a symbiote dragon, created billions of years ago by the Clintar or symbiote god, Knull, manifesting itself from his blood. And if that doesn't sound cool, I don't know what to tell you, because it is really cool. This symbiotic dragon, alongside others like him, rampaged across the cosmos for billions of years with the purpose of attacking and slaying pantheons of gods in Knull's name. It was actually more like Knull was remote controlling the dragons to do his bidding, but hey, tomato tomato. Grendel is considered far more powerful than a standard symbiote and is capable of annihilating godlike beings. Standard symbiote weaknesses to fire and sonic weaponry are not as threatening, and these dragons could actually breathe fire themselves and shoot energy blasts. They are extremely fast, traveling through space at speeds similar to the Silver Surfer, and they're tough as nails. The Grendel itself could merge with other dragons and symbiotes to create a super large entity, making it even more dangerous. Now, for a time, Carnage was in possession of a fragment of the Grendel symbiote and was able to create his own own army, gain the powers of a spirit of vengeance, resurrect Scream and make her part of his army, and was powerful enough to warrant an entire team of A-list Avengers to try and defeat it. Grendel is just off the chain. He's terrifying. Number 2, Mr. E. The symbiote god and creator, Knull, was able to manipulate the living abyss he commanded in a number of ways, ultimately resulting in his army of symbiotes. But what kind of flew over my head was that Knull actually went through a few experiments before getting the symbiotes just the way he liked them. Mr. E is the alias of a primordial proto-symbiote created by Knull as one of those early experiments, of which there are indeed a couple. The proto-symbiote developed his own plans of galactic conquest, traveling to Earth, taking a host in the form of Louise Tuttle, and then infecting a number of scientists at Cape Canaveral, with offshoots of himself, turning them into shadow servants. This gave him a shot at using these scientists to modify a space shuttle to emit negatron particles, and he did that intending to transform the sun into a black star. That would basically take us all off the chessboard, except of course for those Mr. E wanted to turn into shadow servants to serve him as his own universe-conquering shadow army. This act pitted him against Captain Universe and saw him defeated, but Mr. E was brought back by Knull, who decided to give his creation a second shot. So, wanting to impress Knull, Mr. E stole the ebony blade from the Black Knight in the past, creating eclipses and bringing him into conflict with Ulik the Troll under the request of Uatu the Watcher, which is a big deal in comics. He was attacked by Spider-Man, Kang the Conqueror, Rocket Raccoon, and Captain Marvel, as well as the Troll Guy, and he was eventually defeated and given to the Collector. And finally, in at number 1 today, it's Rays. Over time, Carnage, the symbiotic serial killer, has given rise to various new symbiotes, even though he initially disdained the way his alien species reproduced asexually. Now, while a number of these symbiotes came about naturally, some had a bit more of a sinister origin. A cult of elder god worshippers manipulated Carnage to fulfill their dark plans, aiming to resurrect the elder god Chthon. You may be surprised to hear that, but that would be pretty bad. They bestowed his symbiote with mystical abilities, granting Carnage the power to create and control new symbiotes. Now, faced with a relentless anti-symbiote task force, Carnage unleashed the creation of a symbiote called Rays, which looked a lot like Chthon, forcibly bonding it with FBI agent Claire Dixon. However, the Toxin symbiote stepped in and absorbed the Rays symbiote to thwart Carnage and Chthon's wicked schemes, seemingly putting an end to Rays' existence in the process forever, which is sad, but bad guys.
Number 10, Codex. Step into the thrilling reality of Earth 1051, where Dylan's dark side is unleashed, transforming him into the formidable villain known as Codex, a force to be reckoned with. In this reality, Anne Wang becomes Venom instead of Eddie Brock after Peter Parker rejects the symbiote. As time goes on, Venom takes on an armor-like appearance and changes their name to Agent Venom. With the Venom symbiote, Anne ends up giving birth to a child, a half-human, half-symbiote boy named Dylan. However, in this reality, Dylan doesn't become the hero that we know him to be, but instead a villain after falling under the influence of the powerful symbiote god, Knull. Under the name of Codex, he seeks to conquer the world, and Anne, as Agent Venom, is one of the heroes who rises up to stop him. But despite their best efforts, Codex proves to be an insurmountable foe, and the fight to save the world becomes an epic battle of good versus evil. And friends, before we move on to our next point on this list, if you love what we do here at Top 10 Nerd, be sure to show us you love us by clicking that like. Number 9, Zombie Carnage. Elsa Bloodstone ends up running into the zombified version of Carnage, or what's left of it, in Volume 2 of Marvel Zombies, issue number 2 from 2015. Her and the kid she is traveling with, whom she calls Shut Up, no seriously, that's what she calls them, ends up in a trap Carnage has laid out that Elsa referred to as its scab web. Yes, it is as gross as it sounds. This version of the villain has been reduced to just the upper torso and appears to be covered in little blood blisters. It finds itself defeated after its head is removed from its body and used as a projectile by Elsa, and its body, or its scab web, is unleashed, but subsequently is set on fire by a man who appears to be Ranger Warren Worthington, but is actually a zombie Mystique in disguise. Dun dun dun. While this version of Carnage is defeated here, who knows how many before Elsa arrived had fallen fallen prey to it. Also, I love how it kind of takes like another zombie to take out another zombie, you know what I mean? Number 8. What if the alien costume had possessed Spider-Man? In What If issue number 4, we find out the answer to this question. Here, Peter didn't realize until it was too late what his black suit truly was. No longer able to seemingly separate from Venom, Peter remains stuck with the symbiote. Although he attempts to get help, Venom uses its camouflage powers to make them impossible to find, also taking control of Peter whenever he attempts to contact Black Cat to actually get help. When Venom does end up in a battle with the other heroes, the symbiote jumps ship to Hulk, making it now one of the most powerful symbiotes there is, and leaving Peter drained of life energy. Appearing as a frail old man, Peter would soon pass away, dying of old age once he was abandoned. In another confrontation, Venom once more leaves Hulk for Thor, attempting to bond with him permanently. Even worse, it would take Black Cat's strong convictions and powerful weapon to defeat this alternate version of Venom. Number 7. Venom. One of the alternate versions of Venom is actually also a version of Gwen Stacy. This version of the character hails from the Earth 65 reality, Spider-Gwen's home reality. Here for a time, Gwen Stacy, often known as Spider-Woman, Spider-Gwen, or currently Ghost Spider, bonded with the Venom symbiote. In this reality, the Venom symbiote was created in a lab by Dr. Elsa Brock. It was used to return Gwen's spider-like powers to her through bonding with her. This version of the symbiote is seemingly made up of jelly-like little spiders which can come together and even shapeshift. However, this version of Venom was created based on basically alien spiders. Initially, Gwen attempted to resist the offer to bond with the Venom symbiote because it was offered to her by her enemy, Matt Murdock, who in this reality is a bad guy. I know we're used to Matt Murdock being a good guy, being Daredevil and all that stuff, but here, not his deal. Number 6. Aunt May. I bet you would never think of Aunt May when it comes to a strongest symbiotes list, but hey, here we are. This version of Aunt May is basically a monster, being an alternate version of the character from Earth 616, but also an alternate of technically another alternate, Aunt May Spider-Man. When encountering this alternate version of herself, Spider-Man, Earth 3123's Aunt May, and Miles Morales of the Ultimate Universe 1610 must team up to take on this alternate Aunt May version of Carnage. Carnage May and her Earth's Peter and Uncle Ben work together trying to basically take out their other counterparts across the multiverse, as they believe the existence of the multiverse proves that nothing really matters. That's how they see it anyways. They are a force of chaos and death, and this version of Carnage is so deadly that she actually proves to be too much for Miles and Spider-Man alone. Number 5. Edward Sachs. Edward Sachs is a little bit higher up because of just how terrifyingly massive and evil he is. This version of Venom has taken up a job in politics and appears in the Spider-Man Reign story as the aide to the mayor of New York, who here is Mayor Waters. He hails from Earth 70237. Edward Sachs, as he is referred to, though, appears to actually be the one who is pulling the mayor's strings, and seems to have more control than most aides over what goes on in the city of New York. He has also been working to bring back the Sinister Six. Oh boy. He also made thousands of copies of the Venom symbiote and is responsible for Web, a security group responsible for preventing anyone from leaving the city. It's a very dystopian, dark reality, Spider-Man Reign. So if you want to be a little bit depressed, go check that out. Number 4. Ultimate Venom. There are a couple different versions of Ultimate Venom on the Earth of 1610, the Conrad Marcus version and the Eddie Brock Jr. version. This alternate version of the Venom symbiote was created to be a cure for cancer, as opposed to being an alien entity from outer space, and as such, its healing and regenerative properties supersede even the Earth 616 version. Like in the Tom Hardy Venomverse, however, this suit can only bond with specific people, and if it isn't compatible with you, it'll kill you. This gigantic powerhouse of a symbiote has been shown to be stronger than both Miles Morales and Peter Parker of Earth 616 combined. Number 3. Grendel Symbiote. While this is still technically Cletus Cassidy as Carnage from Earth 616, some may consider the Grendel symbiote to be a different version of Carnage altogether, since the Carnage symbiote itself at this point in the story is kinda dead and gone. And honestly, so is Cletus. He's basically a corpse that was revived and then like kinda stuffed inside a symbiote. He still has a consciousness and everything, but I'm not sure if we'd quite call him alive here. This version of Carnage is probably one of the most horrifying when you consider its purpose. The Knull symbiote takes the place of Carnage and is used by Cletus to basically hunt down all the codices on Earth, which exist inside former hosts of symbiote spines. Think you can imagine how that kind of goes when you need to get those codices. Acquiring the codices bolstered his own power and ultimately allowed him to achieve his main goal of waking up the god of the symbiotes, Knull. Number 2, God of Carnage, or the Carnage God, or God of Carnage is kind of like the story involving this character. God of Carnage technically hails from Earth 616 as well, but honestly extends beyond that in terms of how far the entity's reaches, I would say. It is an offshoot of Carnage, but basically answers the question of what happens when Carnage decides to ditch Cletus Cassidy. Honestly, the God of Carnage, or the Carnage God, while technically an incarnation of Carnage, is like the Knull symbiote version, so far removed from the original version of this symbiote that it's even hard to really consider them one and the same being, save for appearance and I suppose their shared kind of chaotic alignment. The Carnage God wields the All Blood, his own God Butcher weapon, an alternate version of the All Black Necrosword. This alternate version of Carnage is also very different in the fact that it doesn't have a host. At this point, seeing hosts as a distraction from its own purpose and plans, who were basically previously holding Carnage back, so they don't mess with hosts no more. Number 1, Carnage Cosmic. There was a time when Carnage actually ended up going cosmic in terms of his power source and level. The Carnage symbiote at one point jumped ship to Norrin Radd, one of the Heralds of Galactus. While in the main continuity the bond between them did not last, there is a what if comic that imagines what could have happened had the bond between them remained. In the end, in this alternate reality, in order to prevent Carnage from having too much power and control over him, the Silver Surfer regains control for long enough just to hurl himself, along with Carnage, into the sun. However, apparently that wasn't actually the end, as somehow the two survived this, reappearing again in the 2013 comic Longshot Saves the Marvel Universe issue number 3, probably honestly thanks to the Silver Surfer's powers, not necessarily the powers of Carnage, since the symbiote is like very susceptible to fire damage. So you think going to the sun, you think that'd be it, but apparently not. Apparently not.
Coming in at number 10 today is Carnage. I saw a lot of people didn't like how we said Knull would fear any of the symbiotes, and obviously not. It's just a list of strong symbiotes that could actually potentially cause a problem for Knull in the right circumstances. For example, Knull wouldn't fear Eddie Brock or Carnage, but they both took him out when they applied themselves and gained power boosts. Being a red symbiote, Carnage is quite a bit more volatile than others of his already violent race. He is unpredictable and possibly even stronger than Venom in terms of raw power, but he becomes even crazier after bonding with serial Cletus Cassidy. As Cletus was already a serial before becoming Carnage, the extra aggression caused by the bonding with a symbiote only made him more cruel and dangerous. Carnage was such a threat to Venom that the Lethal Protector decided to form a truce with his enemy, Spider-Man, in order to defeat him. Now, Carnage was able to create weapons as well as crazier powers like traversing data and phone lines to attack people on the other side, but Cassidy's Carnage is actually pretty weak if you compare him to some of the other symbiote's hosts, like Norman Osborn, who bonded with the symbiote and then used his Goblin Serum to become the utterly terrifying Red Goblin, or when it bonded with a fraction of the power of a symbiote dragon. But more recently, Carnage has been traveling the multiverse by itself, gaining incredibly powerful boosts to its power that have even allowed it to take the life of an alternate reality Knull, the symbiote god. Number 9. Payback. Payback is Mavis Trent, an agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. who bonded with a symbiote that isn't exactly a member of the same race the other symbiotes like Venom and Carnage are. Her symbiote is more like an offshoot or cousin of the Clintar race. Payback is an energy-based symbiote rather than an organically based one, which, as you can imagine, makes her rather unique and pretty powerful, with some cool different symbiote powers to boot. While having all the usual superhuman enhancements, Payback can also fly and produce electromagnetic manipulation in the form of microwaves and electromagnetic pulses. The symbiote itself had previously bonded to her father and had imprinted with his personality and memories, which transferred to Mavis when they bonded. Now, the symbiote also feeds off of its host's bliss without hurting them, which actually sounds quite lovely compared to regular symbiotes. The energy-based quality of Payback Payback's ability is what gives me the reason to believe that it could pose a problem for Knull. This is pure speculation, like literally the rest of this list and the previous part, but given the sheer power of other light and energy based heroes, and how Knull is a god powered by darkness, I have to assume that Payback might actually be able to do some damage in the right circumstances, but we'll never know. Number 8. Mr. E. The symbiote god and creator Knull was able to manipulate the living beasts he commanded in a number of different ways, ultimately resulting in his army of symbiotes. But what kind of flew right over my head was that Knull went through a few experiments before getting the symbiotes just the way he wanted them. Mr. E is the alias of a primordial proto-symbiote created by Knull as one of those early experiments, of which there are indeed a few. The proto-symbiote developed his own plans of galactic conquest, traveling to Earth, taking a host in the form of Louise Tuttle, and then infecting a number of scientists at Cape Canaveral with offshoots of himself, turning them into shadow servants. This gave him a shot at using these scientists to modify a space shuttle to emit negatron particles intending to transform the sun into a black star. That would basically take us all off of the playing field, except of course for those Mr. E wanted to turn into shadow servants to serve him as his own universe-conquering shadow army. This act pitted him against Captain Universe and saw him defeated by that hero, but Mr. E was brought back by Knull, who decided to give his creation a second shot. So, wanting to impress Knull, Mr. E stole the ebony blade from the Black Knight in the past, creating eclipses and bringing him into conflict with Ulik the Troll under the request of Uatu the Watcher. Attacked by Spider-Man, King the Conqueror, Rocket Raccoon, and Captain Marvel, he was eventually defeated and given to the Collector, but I hope he comes back at some point. Number 7. Silence. Andrea Benton was accidentally bonded to a separated piece, or I guess we can call it a clone, of the Venom symbiote when Flash Thompson as Agent Venom tried to protect her, leading to her debut as the new sidekick Mania. Now Mania is pretty awesome and she looks super cool, but she's not that strong, and she was eventually separated from the Mania symbiote after she was possessed by a demonic Hellmark, later bonding with the reborn Scream symbiote, arguably the most powerful of the Life Foundation symbiotes. Now, later on, Carnage corrupted the Scream symbiote and Andy used her Hellfire to wipe it out for good, or so she thought. Turns out that Alchemax used the symbiote's remains alongside a sample of the anti-Venom symbiote to create a somewhat brand new symbiote known as Silence. Andy bonded with the symbiote thinking it was Scream, but in actuality it was Silence. She gained a new corruptive touch deadly to other symbiotes, which would at least cause a problem for Knull's creations, coupled with the sonic scream. Now, bonded with the right individual, I do think that Silence may have a shot at causing Knull some kind of problems. Number 6. Codex. In the current Venom series, we follow the parallel journeys of Eddie Brock and his son, Dylan. Eddie's quest takes him through space and time as he grapples with his newfound godlike abilities as the new King in Black. Meanwhile, Dylan remains on Earth bonded with the Venom symbiote under the impression that his father has passed away. Unbeknownst to them, Eddie falls prey to a future version of himself, Meridius, the most formidable King in Black, whose enigmatic intentions unfold over the centuries. Now, the key to saving Eddie from this lies in Dylan himself, who has discovered a hidden power within the Venom symbiote and within himself. In Venom number 15, Dylan unveils his newfound abilities as Codex, known as the quote Chainbreaker. He wields all black the Necro Sword that Eddie obtained after defeating Knull. Dylan possesses the unique capability to sever a symbiote from the Hive each time he bonds with it. With all black the Necro Sword, he can extend this power to other symbiotes. An example of this is when he severs Bedlam's hand, which no longer regenerates because it's now disconnected from the Clintar hive mind. Dylan's extraordinary powers allow him to quote reap a symbiote from the Hive. This signifies that he's the sole individual capable of standing against a King in Black, who wields near omnipotent power while connected to the Hive. Dylan's ability also makes him the only one capable of permanently defeating a King in Black. Number 5. Bedlam. After Eddie Brock's ascension to Knull's former role as a Cosmic King in Black, Eddie was traveling the galaxy by inhabiting different symbiote bodies when he arrived in the Garden of Time after being transported to the future. There, he encountered another King in Black known as Bedlam, who was unstuck in time. Now, this giant symbiote is a powerhouse even compared to the other King in Blacks across time, and that's actually because he's a future version of Eddie Brock's King in Black, who is fueled by rage at knowing his entire existence is heading towards one outcome. As another King in Black who already defeated Knull to become a King in Black, yes, Knull would be afraid of Bedlam. Is this kind of cheating? Maybe a little bit, but it's what has to happen since you guys won't let us just have fun and talk about powerful symbiotes, so it's your fault. Number 4, the eventuality. On that note though, I mentioned before that Eddie Brock was heading towards one eventual future. That eventual future is called the eventuality, and that is another being that Knull would absolutely fear. As Eddie Brock travels through time as the King in Black, his timeline will branch many times over. Most branches will continue to perform the King in Black's work to maintain the universe from within, though some, like Meridius for example, unsuccessfully attempt to escape their responsibilities. All of these branches will work for longer than the lifespan of the universe before retiring to the unbeyond, which is the place that is the opposite of where the Beyonders are from, where they converge and become the eventuality. The eventuality supervises and occasionally intervenes to stop his past selves from becoming as destructive as Knull. Number 3, Agent Venom from Earth 1051. Originating from Earth 1051, Agent Venom made a dramatic entrance when the primary Eddie Brock and Dylan Brock were transported across the multiverse. Upon their arrival, they discovered a world dominated by the sinister symbiote, Codex, whose oppressive rule was persistently challenged by Anne Weying, who is this Agent Venom, and her fellow symbiote heroes. In addition to contending with the overwhelming threat within their own world, Anne played a pivotal role in assembling a team of Venoms from various different universes. This alliance now stands as the last line of defense against the ambitions of the Carnage symbiote, which is seeking to gain godlike power. Anne's incarnation of the Venom symbiote may not be inherently more powerful than its counterparts, but the resilience and tenacity displayed by both her and the symbiote throughout their trials pretty much serves as a testament to their enduring strength. Not to mention, she and her squad are one of the only things standing against a Carnage that has already taken the life of an alternate Knull, the symbiote god. She may not be able to do much alone, but she's one heck of a big kahuna, so yeah. Number 2, the Darkhold symbiote. First appearing in Carnage Volume 2 Number 6, an offshoot of the Darkhold augmented Carnage symbiote bonded with a South African teenager, Jubilee Van Scotter. This symbiote established a psychic link between her and Cletus Cassidy that enabled her to help the anti-symbiote task force track him down. Now Jubilee was initially unable to manifest the symbiote beyond it imbuing her with superhuman abilities, but when Carnage summoned the Eldritch god Chthon, she assimilated the Toxin and Ray symbiotes into her own symbiote. Now due to Jubilee lacking any hatred or malice in her heart, once manifested, the symbiote, unlike its progenitor and siblings, lacked the fangs and claws customary to other symbiotes. Further empowered by the psychic energies of the world through the Darkhold's eldritch magic, Jubilee's symbiote transformed into basically an angelic knight and became powerful enough to banish Chthon back into Calais, but the symbiote and its absorbed siblings seemingly perished immediately afterwards. Its interaction with Chthon and being able to send it back makes me think it could probably do something to Knull too, but we'll never know. And finally, in at number 1, it's the Serpent. Coming out of left field here, Donald Blake is the human form Odin created to house Thor when he banished his son to Earth to teach him humility. Now sadly, Donald Blake broke bad in 2020, hating how he was sent to a mystical world every time Thor took his godly form. There, he ended up taking the life of the Midgard Serpent, absorbed its power, and mixed it with the Odin Force to try and take out all the Asgardians. Now thankfully he was stopped and Loki imprisoned him, but unfortunately a symbiote child created from the King in Black Bedlam, who we talked about before, bonded and took control of the denizen of Limbo known as Darkoth, and infused with magic and wielding a Prometheum symbiote hammer that it created called Helnir, it attacked Asgard, being opposed by Thor, Loki, and Meridius disguised as Eddie Brock. After defeating Bedlam's child, Meridius reveals himself taking the hammer, and Thor destroys Meridius in an awesome display of power that also melts the symbiote Prometheum hammer. As Meridius escapes into the time stream, the amalgamated symbiote metal hammer leaks through Asgard's ground and it finds its way to the place that Donald Blake is being held, dripping down right onto his face and mutating him into a hybrid of himself, the powerful symbiote hammer, and creating the Serpent. Now given the amount of power put into everything I just talked about, I have no doubt that this new Serpent could oppose Knull if it ever had the chance, which it probably won't. Number 10, Sleeper. Sleeper, the youngest offspring of Venom, is like the overachiever in the Venom family. Unlike its siblings, Sleeper got a cushy upbringing, incubated safely before bonding with a host. This special treatment comes with its perks. First off, Sleeper skips the whole Spider-Man eye thing. Its appearance is different, and it doesn't have to have those big old white eyes. Also, Sleeper isn't your typical symbiote. It's more mature and chill, maybe a tad smug. What makes Sleeper stand out in the symbiote crowd is its brain power. It's not just a headfirst, impulsive fighter. Thanks to increased cognitive functionality, Sleeper takes a calculated approach to combat. It's so smart that it actually went as far as lobotomizing its host, Tel-Kar, and used him like a puppet to dodge the Kree warrior's influence. Beyond its unique appearance and brains though, Sleeper has cool abilities like bending light to disappear and releasing neurotoxins to knock out its enemies. Oh, and the cutest part, Sleeper can transform into a little kitty cat. How cool is that? It's very cool. It's cute. I like it. Number 9. Toxin. Toxin, the son of Carnage, is like the rock star of symbiotes. He's the 1000th in the line of Venom's descendants, and his raw power is so intense that even the big boss of symbiotes, Knull, aka the King in Black, is a little bit freaked out by him. Carnage, Toxin's dad, for lack of a better word, discovers his symbiote pregnancy and, being the oddball that he is, feels both terrified that his kid might outpower him and kind of grossed out that, being a male symbiote, he's technically pregnant, which is weird. Anyhow, Carnage plans to get rid of Toxin, but Venom steps in like the superhero dad that he is. Toxin gets trained by Venom and bonds with a New York City cop named Patrick Mulligan. Thanks to this, Toxin's powers stay in check, and he's all about doing good. His childlike vibe keeps him from going on full power, which is a good thing because this guy is a powerhouse. Toxin is resistant to heat and sound, has killer tracking skills, and basically combines the strengths of both Venom and Carnage together. Plus, he developed a venomous bite very recently, but surviving that is a whole other story. Mulligan gets taken out eventually, and Toxin gets a new gig bonding with Eddie Brock before finding a new host named Bren Waters during the King in Black event. Number 8. Scream/Silence. Scream is one of 5 symbiotes that was created by the Evil Life Foundation after traces of Venom were extracted from Eddie Brock. Scream is by far the most unstable of Venom's offspring, but also one of the most powerful as well. It's at its strongest while bonded with Donna Diego, but even after Donna's passing at Eddie's own hands, Scream still poses a major threat to the world. Now, Andrea Benton was eventually separated from the Mania symbiote after she was possessed by a demonic Hellmark, later bonding with the reborn Scream symbiote. Later, Carnage corrupted the Scream symbiote and Andy used her Hellfire to wipe it out for good, or so she thought. Alchemax actually used the symbiote's remains alongside a sample of the anti-Venom symbiote to create a somewhat brand new symbiote known as Silence, which Andy bonded with, gaining a new corruptive touch, deadly to other symbiotes, as well as the usual symbiote powers, plus the Scream symbiote's hair tendril things. Number 7. Poison. Ever since the first time Venom and Spider-Man bonded, that pesky symbiote would continuously try to merge with Peter Parker, but he would only get halfway before Peter could repel him. Now, what happens if Venom finally gets what he wants? Well, in the What If Spider-Man the Other story, we get to find out. After Peter is semi-defeated by Morlun and he cocoons himself under the Brooklyn Bridge, he is offered the chance to be resurrected by the Spider God, but instead of allowing this like he does in the normal continuity, in this story, Peter refuses and is instead stuck in his cocoon, half alive. Now cut to Venom, who, being Spider-Man's crazy ex-girlfriend, senses the vulnerability of his soulmate and completely ditches his current host, Mac Gargan the Scorpion. He intercepts Peter's body, and after months of struggling inside the cocoon together, monstrously breaking down Peter Parker, Venom fully bonds to Peter. Now the pair are truly one, with all the fully realized powers that come with being a symbiote, which include being able to replicate itself and host more than one body, producing stingers that are strong enough to pierce Luke Cage's skin, and the newly dubbed being known as Poison was even able to resurrect Gwen Stacy in a form that seems to take after Venom's offspring, Carnage. Number 6. Gwenom. Spider-Gwen of Earth-65, or Ghost Spider, which is way cooler, has easily one of the best costumes of all the spider heroes. Throw in a healthy dash of a symbiotic monster from outer space, notorious for giving great fashion advice, and well, look at her. She looks absolutely amazing. On top of that, Gwen sort of relies on Venom for her powers since her original powers started to fade. But while that sounds bad, Gwen has actually learned to find a very healthy balance with her symbiote. The symbiote itself enhances whatever emotions the host has, right? So, when she first bonded with Venom thanks to a corrupt Matt Murdock Kingpin, who she was forced to team up with, she was rage-fueled and looking for revenge against the Rhino for attacking her father, and eventually against Murdock himself. But over time, she realized that she needed to control that and give Venom better qualities to enhance in order to control and find balance with the symbiote. In a way, Venom actually helped her to become a better hero, all while still retaining that really sweet suit. Number 5. Anti-Venom. The Anti-Venom symbiote was created when Venom bonded with Eddie Brock after the man was cured of cancer by Mr. Negative. Now thanks to Mr. Negative's healing powers, Eddie's antibodies gave birth to a new kind of symbiote when Venom tried to rebond. Inverting the black and white of the original Venom symbiote, Anti-Venom is now mainly white instead of black. Oh, right, and he has different anti-symbiote powers. His touch is basically caustic to symbiotes and can destroy them with long enough exposure. Anti-Venom can cure people affected by things like radioactivity, parasites, and diseases. And he still has all the enhancements afforded by a symbiote. To make the symbiote even more impressive, Anti-Venom is resistant to heat and sound, the symbiote's most significant weaknesses. After Flash Thompson, Agent Venom eventually lost the Venom symbiote, he bonded with an artificial replica of the Anti-Venom symbiote that he continues to use even after his passing and recent resurrection. Number 4. Carnage. When Eddie Brock was briefly detached from the Venom symbiote, he was imprisoned and his cellmate was none other than Cletus Cassidy, a psychotic murderer serving 11 consecutive life sentences on Rikers Island. When Venom showed up and bust Eddie out of prison, it accidentally produced its first offspring as a result of, get this, Thanos seeking the Infinity Gems out in space. Which is the weirdest reason, but that's actually what happened. This offspring would be Carnage, and it was left in the cell when Venom and Eddie escaped, bonding with Cletus Cassidy through a wound that he sustained on his hand. This meant that the bond they formed was on a blood level, and would be nearly impossible to break. Despite that, there have been other characters that have taken on the symbiote. Norman Osborn was a notable one when he became the Red Goblin and was absolutely terrifying, and I would be silly to not mention that the Grendel dragon had part of itself merge with Carnage to create an incredibly terrifying version of the symbiote known as Dark Carnage that absolutely put up a hell of a fight against Venom and others. And now, Carnage is back yet again, and he's reaching a level of power that puts him on the cosmic map as he's constantly upgrading himself with all kinds of tech and magic to be able to face Eddie Brock, who has become the King in Black of the symbiote race. Number 3. Grendel. Billions of years ago, the Clintar or symbiote god Knull spilled some cosmic innards. Out of those innards came Grendel, a symbiote dragon with a one-way ticket for chaos across the cosmos. Basically, Knull was pulling the strings, using these dragons as his cosmic wrecking crew. Grendel, being a symbiotic dragon, is no run-of-the-mill symbiote. This beast has been on a rampage for eons, smashing gods in Knull's name. It's not exactly Grendel himself doing the stomping, it's more like Knull's puppeteering pulling the strings. Now, Grendel isn't your average symbiote, like I said. Forget the weaknesses to fire and the sonic stuff. This dragon can breathe fire, shoot energy blasts, move at warp speed through space, and is tougher than a steel wall. But wait, it gets even crazier. Grendel can team up with other dragons and symbiotes to form this mega entity of destruction. Grendel is basically the epitome of terrifying awesomeness. Number 2. All Black. All Black the Necrosword is not your everyday symbiote. It's like the granddaddy of all symbiotes in the Marvel Comics universe. Created by the dark god Knull, this bad boy is not just some suit, it's a cosmic tool of destruction. The Necrosword was crafted from the living abyss itself, shaped into a mighty sword that makes Excalibur look like a butter knife. It's dark and it's powerful. Now, what makes All Black unique is that it doesn't just play nice with hosts like your regular symbiote. When someone wields All Black, they're basically wielding the power of the cosmos. This thing can cut through Celestials like a hot knife through butter. The Necrosword has been on quite the journey, passing from hand to hand, creating chaos and legendary battles across the Marvel Universe. It's not just a tool, it's a symbol of power and a game changer in cosmic conflicts. Number 1. Venom. Publication-wise, in Marvel Comics, Venom was the first of his kind to appear, and the one that set the symbiotic ball rolling. After being rejected by Spider-Man, the alien Venom bonded to Eddie Brock, a disgraced reporter who also hated the hero and his Peter Parker alter ego. Now, it took quite a while, but after years of villainy, the two became a lethal protector, anti-hero, and eventually just a straight-up hero. Venom is not the strongest of all symbiotes by any means, but he's certainly one of the most persevering. Venom has been tested against more dangerous symbiotes and always comes out on top because of his resilience. He's proved he can conquer the urges of his race and become a force for good. Venom has recently bonded with Eddie's son, Dylan Brock, and they are both acting as a hero on Earth, with Dylan discovering his own unique powers as Codex. Now, long before that though, the Venom symbiote had also been taken in by the United States government, sedated, and was bonded to decorated soldier Eugene Flash Thompson. Now, Thompson's training and great guy morals mixed with the neutered mind of the Venom symbiote gave him control over the alien suit in a way that others just hadn't been able to do. He mixed the symbiote's capabilities with his own skill to become Agent Venom, which was also technically just Venom, so I'm including him here as well, and there have been a whole bunch of other hosts too, but I don't really care about them because they're not as cool.
At number 10 is Toxin. Toxin is a symbiote born from the Carnage line and was the 1000th symbiote in Venom's lineage, which stands as one of the strongest Clintar in the Marvel Universe. His raw power, derived from both Venom and Carnage, are outmatched even Knull, the King in Black, who genuinely feared his strength. Now, what sets the Toxin symbiote apart is his childlike demeanor, keeping his incredible powers restrained and focused on actually doing good, which is super pleasant considering he's one of the strongest, and his mom is literally Carnage. Resistant to both heat and sound, which would be the biggest weakness for all the rest of the Clintar who came before him, he also possesses enhanced tracking abilities and a venomous bite that's not for the faint of hearted. Originally bonded to a police officer, Patrick Mulligan, with the two attempting to be heroes until Patrick's eventual demise, Toxin has bonded to several different hosts over time, adapting to new hosts like Eddie Brock and Bran Waters during key moments in the comics. The symbiote's existence and untapped raw potential for power add a layer to the possibilities within the MCU, promising immense strength and complexity to any storyline he joins. Also, in my opinion, he just looks the coolest. I mean, to see him on the big screen would be a pleasure to say the least. At number 9 is Anti-Venom. Imagine having all the powers wielding the Venom symbiote and none of the drawbacks, like, oh, I don't know, having a voice in your head that's hungry for brains. Yeah, that's basically Anti-Venom in a nutshell. After Eddie Brock parted ways with the Venom symbiote, there was still remnants of Venom lingering within his body. Later, while battling cancer, Brock volunteered at the Feast Center, where its founder, Martin Lee, also known as Mr. Negative, accidentally used his powers to cure Brock's cancer, but in doing so, some of his negative powers merged with the leftover symbiote in Eddie's bloodstream, fusing with his white blood cells. And once Venom and Brock were reunited once again, the Anti-Venom symbiote emerged, flipping the colors of the original Venom, creating a white, benign version controlled completely by Eddie. This Anti-Venom isn't a conscious entity like Venom once was, it's more like a biological suit under Eddie's complete command. Now, what sets it apart is that it has power against other symbiotes. A touch from Anti-Venom acts like acid to regular symbiotes, eventually destroying them. Beyond that, it's a cure-all. Radioactivity, parasites, diseases, Anti-Venom clears them out. Plus, it keeps the classic symbiote enhancements. It resists what normally weakens symbiotes like heat and sound. Recently, it threw Carnage plans into disarray, but only briefly. If you're enjoying the video so far, you could support the channel by pressing like, subscribing to Top 10 Nerd, and ringing that notification bell. At number 8 is Payback. This is probably the most unique symbiote on this list. Marvis Trent, the covert leader of the True Believers and a S.H.I.E.L.D. analyst, wields a symbiote distinct from its brethren. You see, unlike typical symbiotes that thrive on adrenaline and aggression, Trent's symbiote feeds on pure bliss off of its host. Its strength peaks when she feels joy, offering her those emotions in return. Visually, it's a stark departure from the standard symbiote appearance, with an iridescent shimmer instead of the usual terrifying features. Now, what sets Trent apart isn't just her symbiote's feeding preferences or appearance, she also possesses the typical abilities granted by symbiotic bonds. Her unique connection with the symbiote hints at unexplored potentials within the Clintar, suggesting that these extraterrestrial entities might harbor more surprises, granting their hosts power beyond the norm. Payback's symbiote hints at an entirely different aspect of the symbiote spectrum, adding layers of depth and possibilities for the interactions within the MCU. At number 7 is Scorn. What makes Scorn stand out is its original bonding with machinery. You see, it doesn't really differentiate between itself and technology, forming a unique connection with machines. This ability allows Tannis, the host, to communicate with and influence various forms of technology, kind of like a symbiote version of the TX model from Terminator 3. Hope you guys get that. But let's back it up a bit. Scorn, a spawn of Carnage, found refuge on Tannis Neve's prosthetic arm while she counseled Shriek. When the symbiote's hunger grew menacing, Tannis discarded her prosthetic and Shriek claimed it, but Shriek's chaos frightened the newborn symbiote, prompting it to return to Tannis. This time, she accepted the symbiote wholeheartedly, and bonded to her prosthetic, they gained immense power, stopping Shriek and joining the Mercury team to confront Carnage. At number 6 is Mania. Often known as the daughter of Venom, she emerged as the clone of the original Venom symbiote. This unique symbiote came into being unexpectedly when a portion of Venom attached to a student instead of its target, while Flash Thompson, acting as a teacher in Philadelphia, was combating an attack by Jack-o'-lantern. Contrary to expectations, the symbiote fully bonded with the student, birthing a new entity known as Mania. Originally, Mania stemmed from a violent and purposefully designed Venom clone by the Arat Corporation, aimed at annihilating life on Earth. This clone, dormant within Flash as he carried the Venom symbiote, found autonomy as Mania after being expelled. Adding to its complexity, the Mania symbiote possesses the Hell Mark previously embedded on Venom by Mephisto. While expelled from Venom, the Hell Mark transferred to Mania, granting her the ability to control demons alongside her typical symbiotic abilities. Zux, ZZZXX? I don't really know how to say this. Stands as a peculiar symbiote, quite the outlier among its Clintar kind. Unlike most symbiotes that cherish their hosts, this one actually devours their host's brains instead. Locked away in a Shi'ar prison until freed by the psychopathic Vulcan, it found a new home in a Shi'ar host, joining Vulcan's elite guard. Sent to eliminate Havoc and the Starjammers, Zux failed in its mission, attempting to bond with Raza Longknife during the battle but facing rejection. In the skirmish's aftermath, Zux was flung into the Fault, a grotesque universe hosting an antithesis of Professor X. Now, what unfolds in this space, whether a confrontation or alliance, remains shrouded in mystery, but if they survive, an unprecedented, terrifying force could emerge, harboring vengeful plans. At number 4 is Dreadface. Dreadface is a symbiote of the aggressive variety, which thrives on instigating homicidal tendencies in those it encounters. Its first interactions with the Fantastic Four occurred in the pages of Fantastic Four number 360, titled At the Mercy of Dreadface. Initially confined on the ship of Devos the Devastator, likely apprehended on his quest to eradicate warring life forms across the universe. Now, upon the ship's crash during a clash between the Fantastic Four and Devos, Dreadface fled and inhabited the first being it found, a gorilla. The possessed gorilla attacked Ben Grimm, transferring the symbiote upon touch. The Human Torch intervened, but the symbiote latched onto him instead. Now, you would think that he would just ignite and turn into fire, but he doesn't really do that. The skirmish concluded when the Thing persuaded the fiery symbiote to fly into jet fuel, causing an explosion that seemingly eradicated the alien while sparing Johnny Storm. At number 3 is Scream. Scream is the true de facto leader of the 5 Life Foundation symbiotes forcibly extracted from Venom. In case you don't know, the Life Foundation created these symbiotes in preparation for the mutually assured destruction of the fallout of the Cold War, and the symbiotes they nurtured were meant to be the peacekeepers of this new post-apocalyptic era. Yeah, good luck with that. I digress. Too young to control, the symbiote was merged with Donna Diego, codenamed Strike Agent 4, a mercenary suffering from schizophrenia. And considering that bonding with the symbiote already puts an unwanted voice in your head, this was just a recipe for disaster, as Scream and its symbiotic siblings urged their hosts towards violence. At one point, the 5 sought help from Eddie Brock to control the symbiote's lust for lethality, but Eddie declined, deeming them as no more than potential threats akin to Carnage. Carnage. Donna, losing control to both her schizophrenia and the symbiote's aggression, unleashed chaos in the Times Square. Scream's unique abilities included using hair-like tendrils for attacks and forming wings for flight, setting her apart from other symbiotes. But without guidance, Donna's struggles with her mental state amplified the symbiote's destructive nature, leading to catastrophic consequences. At number 2 is Scorpion's Venom. Mac Gargan, originally the Scorpion, merged with the Venom symbiote after being recruited by Norman Osborn. You see, the symbiote was offered to Gargan during a mission to kidnap Peter Parker's Aunt May. Tempted by its immense power, he defied Osborn, choosing symbiosis over his original mission, seeing as the Venom symbiote would serve as a more powerful suit than any newly designed Scorpion suit ever could be, and thus, Mac Gargan became the even more menacing Venom. This new form of Venom eventually joined the Thunderbolts and later Norman Osborn's Dark Avengers. Initially in control, Gargan began to struggle against the symbiote's influence, succumbing to its need for lethality and exhibiting a more savage and brutal nature. Despite moments of resistance, Gargan eventually embraced the symbiote's darkness, adopting a man-eating and sadistic persona. However, due to a substance used to control the symbiote, he experienced occasional episodes of unexpected timidity, hindering his combat effectiveness. And at number 1 is Warstar. Warstar is a Type 2 battle symbiote which emerged in a recent comic event, who was crafted by Kang the Conqueror in the 602nd century. Initially under strict programming to serve Kang, it shifted control to Eddie Brock, who was able to control the hostless symbiote remotely via his new King in Black powers. During their efforts, it helped Eddie overcome a more potent battle symbiote and confront Kang, but was eventually defeated. Later serving as Eddie's host during training with Kang, Warstar was later seized by the Murdius after Eddie traveled through time, falling into a trap set by Kang and Murdius. Warstar, unlike other battle symbiotes, displayed cybernetic enhancements allowing it to shapeshift, manifest weapons, and replicate technological devices, demonstrating a form of technopathy. This included the ability to mimic Kang's time sword. Despite its loyalty to Kang, Warstar supported Eddie's actions and engaged in combat against Kang when prompted under the guise of a training exercise, showing a willingness to act beyond its programming.